I know a lot of people want to talk about is the space ETF. What's going to happen? When could it come out? I've heard the rumor. It was mentioned also in the chat here that the earliest it could come out, I think, is the 29th of March. Am I correct with that, Chris? At least technically was.
That's the date I have circled on my calendar. I actually have the day before that circled on my calendar. But according to normal ETF practices, is once they issue that filing with the SEC, there's a certain number of days before the ETF can launch. So if you do the math, March 29th is the date that I get. Again, that would be the earliest. So there's a chance it could launch, later after that. But the earliest it will launch, March 29th. So I think it's a good time, since we're talking Cathie Wood. I've got those tickers there, Mitch. If you want to put those up on screen, those are the space SPACs or the space-related SPACs. And again, the space market, there's tons of companies to choose from. And if you read the original filing that ARK put out, it's not just limited to space companies or rocket companies. It could involve, 3D printing companies. So, maybe a Desktop Metal or a AONE also ends up. It could be satellites. It could be, 5G companies, using the space. So that ticker NPA up there, is the 5G from space. So of these tickers, full disclosure, I own SPCE. I own HOL, and I own SRAC. So I already touched on Virgin Galactic a little bit. That one's already owned by ARK. Also, ARK has an affiliation with a Japanese company that has a space ETF, and Virgin Galactic is the largest holding in that ETF. So to me, I really think Virgin Galactic gets added. The questions I have is, which other space SPACs are going to be included, so what do you think, Mitch? I know aside from the SPACs, you've been looking at some other satellite companies, but what do you think, with the space ETF?
So with the space ETF, I think it's all about timing, and what prices she's going to be grabbing. If she's grabbing prices on this pullback, then yeah, that would be the best time. But of course, it's not out right now. So we need to watch the environment and what prices these stocks are at near the level when it comes out, guys. So that's one thing I definitely keep an eye out, because let's say if it comes out and they're near the support, I'm jumping in because millions of dollars can end up flowing through these SPACs. And so that right there, that volume, that amount of money could really move these stocks. But one thing I don't want to see is if the stocks are near that high, near that resistance, yeah, it could go up a little bit more, but you also have that floor to fall through. And that's something that I definitely pay attention to. Now, to talk about specifics. All right. So guys, there's a couple of these that I would be like no-brainer. No-brainer to me is going to be HOL, SRAC, and NPA. Why? Because I just feel like those have the best business strategies, and they're trying to focus on certain areas in space versus be a complete overall space company. And so let's take a real close look at HOL. I like where it's at on the chart, and that's why I'm going to bring this one up right now. And let's take a look here. I'm going to put it up on the chart here. And look at this pullback, guys. You're getting a pullback closer towards this resistance, towards the 1130s. That's when you got this big dip on the 5th of March. And man, that would have been maybe the price to target. But I mean, that's a little bit hard to get in there. It was a really quick dip. And the next day it was already up over 12. That kind of shows you that level right there isn't a bad level to go off of, because if something can immediately recover that level, that shows that the price volume there actually was bigger and could increase. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one. I like this one near kind of the $12.50s to $12 so that you can get a look back up towards, let's say, 22 or 24 on a breakout. But definitely HOL, I like this one in the long run, and we'll keep an eye on it. Now, to go into one that I'm not too big of a fan, it hurts to say it. Sometimes, I don't like to go against Chris, but sometimes we are. We're going to have different opinions, right? And then that's what the show is really about, guys, is that we're each just kind of giving what we think about certain stocks and how we can make, wealth off of this, really. And so to me, SPCE, I just see it as a losing battle for Cathie and as a losing battle for a lot of retail investors. Why? Because in my eyes, I just feel that consumers are going to see this as kind of a gimmick in the long run. In my eyes, I think that this is going to be space travel. And to think about it, I just don't see people paying up the price tag to get into a stock like this. But I mean, it went up to 60. It definitely has potential. But the question is, will they be able to succeed in what they want to do in the long term? And we're talking really long term here. We're not talking about next 3 weeks. We're talking about long term. And to me, I personally have always compared this stock with the stock that I feel is the leader in space, which is Maxar. And I know someone mentioned that in the chat there. So definitely a shout out whoever mentioned that. But this one's not a SPAC, but at least in my eyes, the leader in the space. Unless SpaceX comes out, I take a look at this one to tell me how the space race is doing and how we're going to continue moving. So one thing I noticed is that this one, when it first got on my radar, guys, when we popped through this $10 level, and then what ended up happening is there were so many government contracts down near these $12, $16 level, and that gave it a bottoming, a floor. And so to me, I look in space where I can get government contracts. That's what stands out, guys. If it ain't government contract, I ain't even taking a look, because consumers can always pull their money back, but governments and that yearly contract, I think that one gets paid out, and that's why I stick with Maxar.
And guys, I know someone brought it up in the chat, and Mitch, I gave you the wrong ticker. So it's not VTAQ, it's VACQ is the Rocket Lab space SPAC out there. So yeah, you know, and Mitch is on with that SPCE, right? Is the passenger space industry, you know, how high can that go? So for me, with Virgin Galactic, I'm hoping, you know, they do have a flight coming up this year with the Italian space agency that will actually bring in revenue, and that'll take, you know, some people to space, you know, for a space mission. So can they replicate that? Can they, you know, move past just the passenger space travel? And also, you know, are they going to go into, you know, hypersonics, you know, flights, which is also another area of growth that Kathy Wood has talked about. So, you know, maybe space or SPCE can move past just space travel. But, you know, good points brought up there by Mitch. Again, I own SPCE. So the space ETF is very exciting. We'll be hitting on it again, of course, as it gets closer, and then also once it launches. So we just wanted to bring you some SPACs, you know, to keep on your radar that could be added there. And then again, we talked about those SPACs that Kathy Wood and ARK Funds already owns.